The first time I realized I was a ghost in my own home was on a Tuesday morning when my wife Marta and her best friend Jamie were discussing my funeral arrangements while I was still breathing in the next room. "You're so lucky to have Nick," Jamie said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she'd perfected over the years. "He's such a devoted husband." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Marta's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Lucky? Jamie, honey, take him if you want. He's nothing but trouble. The man follows me around like a lost puppy, asking what I need, what I want. It's exhausting." I stood frozen in the hallway, coffee mug halfway to my lips, listening to my wife of 20 years discuss me like I was a defective appliance she couldn't return. "At least he's reliable," Jamie offered weakly. "Reliable is just another word for boring," Marta replied. "Sean never asks what I need. He just knows. That's the difference between a man and whatever Nick is." Sean. There it was. The name that had been floating around our house like a bad smell for the past 6 months. Sean Grady, creative director at Marta's advertising agency. Sean with his perfect hair and his Porsche and his gym membership that actually got used. I'm Nick Carter, 42 years old, IT specialist for a mid-sized insurance company in suburban Chicago. I fix computers, troubleshoot networks, and apparently, according to my wife, exist as nothing more than a source of irritation in her otherwise perfect life. The thing about being invisible is that you see everything. You hear conversations that weren't meant for your ears. You notice the new clothes, the expensive perfume, the way your wife's phone is suddenly password protected after 15 years of leaving it lying around open. "I should go," Jamie said. "My yoga class starts in 20 minutes. "Mine too," Marta replied, "though I might skip it today. Sean mentioned wanting to go over the Morrison account again." Another laugh, another knife twist. I waited until I heard the front door close twice before I moved. My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. Cold coffee seemed appropriate for a man who'd just learned his wife considered him nothing but trouble. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma, our 19-year-old daughter away at Northwestern. "Dad, is everything okay at home? Mom's Instagram posts are getting weird. Call me." I stared at the message. Even Emma, 2 hours away and buried in college life, could sense something was wrong. But her mother's husband? The man who shared her bed, paid her bills, and listened to her complain about her job every night? He was just trouble. I opened Instagram and found Marta's account. The latest post was from yesterday. A photo of her and Sean at some trendy downtown restaurant, both holding cocktails, both looking like they were auditioning for a romantic comedy. The caption read, "Working dinner with the best creative director in Chicago. Blessed-teamwork. Living my best life." 43 likes. Jamie had commented, "You two make such a great team," with 3 heart emojis. I scrolled back through her recent posts, more photos with Sean, a group shot from an agency retreat I'd never heard about, a selfie from a wine bar with the caption, "Sometimes you need to celebrate the little victories with people who understand your passion." Not once in the past 3 months had I appeared in any of her posts. I'd been digitally erased from her life while still physically present in her house. My phone rang. Raj, my neighbor, and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Nick, you sound like hell," he said before I'd even spoken. "Good morning to you too, Raj." Sarah saw Marta leave with that blonde woman again, 3rd time this week. They're not going to yoga, are they? Raj's wife, Sarah, was the neighborhood watch committee rolled into one person. She knew everyone's business before they did. "Probably not," I admitted. "Come over. Sarah's making her famous breakfast burritos, and I've got fresh coffee. Real coffee, not that instant garbage you drink." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Raj's kitchen, staring at a breakfast burrito the size of a small child, while Sarah paced back and forth like a prosecutor building her case. "She's having an affair," Sarah announced. "The signs are all there. New clothes, new perfume, mysterious meetings, and that friend of hers is definitely the accomplice. Jamie's been covering for her." "Sarah," Raj warned. "Don't Sarah me. I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. I know an affair when I see one." She stopped pacing and looked directly at me. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I took a bite of the burrito. It was excellent, which somehow made everything worse. Here I was, eating a perfect breakfast made by friends who cared more about my well-being than my own wife did. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Well, you better figure it out," Sarah replied, "because right now you're letting them make you the fool in this story, and Nick Carter is nobody's fool." If only that were true. I spent the rest of the morning at Raj's, helping him install a new smart thermostat and trying not to think about my crumbling marriage. But every time my phone buzzed with a text from Marta about running late or grabbing lunch with the team, the knife twisted a little deeper. By the time I got home, I'd made a decision. If I was nothing but trouble, maybe it was time to start acting like it. The thing about being an IT specialist is that you develop certain skills. You learn to find hidden files, recover deleted data, and trace digital footprints that people think they've covered. You also learn that the most damaging evidence is usually hiding in plain sight. I started small. Marta's laptop, the one she left open on the kitchen counter every morning while she got ready for work. The same laptop that used to have no password protection until about 3 months ago. But Marta had made one crucial mistake. She'd never changed the recovery email address. It was still linked to an old account I'd set up for her years ago, an account I still had access to. It took me exactly 12 minutes to reset her password and gain access to her email. What I found made my cold coffee from the morning seem like a 5-star meal. Dozens of emails between Marta and Sean, dating back 4 months. The early ones were professional enough, discussing campaigns and client meetings. But by the 3rd week, they'd devolved into something that would make a romance novelist blush. "Can't stop thinking about yesterday," Sean had written. "You're incredible, Marta. Nick is the luckiest man alive and he doesn't even know it." Marta's response, "Lucky? He's clueless. Sometimes I wonder what I ever saw in him. You make me feel alive again, Sean, like the woman I used to be before I settled for safe and boring." I screenshotted everything. Every email, every flirtatious exchange, every plan to meet at hotels during lunch meetings. By the time I was done, I had a digital paper trail that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. But the emails were just the beginning. Marta's credit card statements, which I'd always handled because she hated dealing with financial stuff, told their own story. Charges at expensive restaurants I'd never been to, a hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, lingerie purchases from boutiques that definitely weren't shopping for me. My phone rang. Emma, again. "Dad, seriously, what's going on? Mom posted another photo with that Sean guy, and people are starting to comment. Mrs. Patterson from down the street asked me if you and Mom were having problems." I looked at the laptop screen, at the evidence of my wife's betrayal laid out in neat digital rows. "Emma, can you come home this weekend? I think we need to talk." "Is it that bad?" "It's complicated, sweetheart. But yes, it's pretty bad." After I hung up, I continued my digital archaeology. Marta's phone records showed dozens of calls to Sean's number, many lasting over an hour. Her GPS history, which she'd never thought to turn off, showed regular trips to his apartment complex on the north side of town. The most damaging evidence came from her text messages, which were automatically backing up to the cloud account I'd set up for our family plan years ago. Jamie wasn't just a passive observer in this drama. She was an active participant. "Operation Get Marta Laid is in full effect," Jamie had texted 2 weeks ago. "I've got your alibi covered for Thursday. Yoga class, remember? Though I doubt you'll be doing any stretching. Well, maybe some. Marta's reply. You're terrible, but thank you. I owe you dinner. Somewhere expensive. Sean's paying. More screenshots, more evidence, more proof that my wife and her best friend had turned my humiliation into their entertainment. But the text that really got to me, the one that made my hands shake as I took the screenshot, was from just yesterday. Jamie. How long are you going to keep this up? Nick's going to figure it out eventually. Marta. Nick couldn't figure out a jigsaw puzzle with the picture on the box. Besides, what's he going to do? Divorce me? He doesn't have the spine. He'll just keep being his pathetic, clingy self until I decide what I want to do. Jamie. And what do you want to do? Marta. Honestly? I want to see how far I can push this. It's almost fun, watching him try so hard to make me happy while I'm getting everything I need somewhere else. He's like a puppy that keeps bringing you the newspaper even after you've stopped reading it. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence of my kitchen. Outside, I could hear the neighborhood coming to life. Kids playing in yards, lawn mowers starting up, the normal sounds of suburban life continuing while my world collapsed. My phone buzzed with a text from Marta. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Leftovers are in the fridge. For 20 years, I would have heated up those leftovers, watched some TV, and gone to bed alone, telling myself that her dedication to work was admirable. For 20 years, I would have been the pathetic, clingy husband she described in her texts. But not tonight. Tonight, I was going to start being the trouble she claimed I was. I opened my laptop and started making plans. Sean Grady lived in a trendy loft complex called Harbor Point, the kind of place where young professionals paid $3,000 a month for exposed brick walls and the privilege of saying they lived downtown. His Porsche 911 was parked in spot 47, gleaming silver under the parking garage lights like a monument to midlife crisis cliches. I'd been sitting in my Honda Civic for 2 hours, feeling like a discount private investigator, when Marta's BMW pulled into the visitor parking area. She stepped out wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled in a way that suggested she'd spent considerable time and money at the salon. She looked beautiful. She also looked like a woman dressed for seduction. My phone was already recording when she walked across the parking garage, her heels clicking against the concrete in a rhythm that seemed to mock every evening I'd spent alone, heating up leftovers and wondering why my wife was always too tired for conversation when she got home. She disappeared into the elevator, and I sat there in the dark, surrounded by the evidence of my own stupidity. 20 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected that my wife was capable of this level of deception. My phone buzzed. A text from Jamie, but this time it wasn't to Marta. It was to me. Hey, Nick. Marta mentioned you might be feeling a little under the weather. Hope you feel better soon. We had such a great yoga session today. Really worked up a sweat. The timestamp showed 8:47 p.m. It was currently 9:15 p.m., and Marta was upstairs in another man's apartment, probably working up a different kind of sweat. I screenshotted the text and added it to my growing collection of evidence. At 11:23 p.m., Marta emerged from the elevator, her hair slightly messed, her lipstick gone, her dress wrinkled in ways that told a story I didn't want to read. She walked back to her car like a woman who'd just gotten away with something. I followed her home, staying 3 cars back, watching her taillights cut through the darkness of suburban streets I'd driven down thousands of times as a faithful husband. Now I was driving them as something else entirely. She was already in bed, pretending to be asleep, when I walked into our bedroom 20 minutes after her. Her clothes were in the hamper, and she'd showered. The scent of her expensive perfume had been replaced by the smell of her vanilla body wash. How was work? I asked quietly. Exhausting, she mumbled without opening her eyes. The Morrison account is turning into a nightmare. I stood there in the dark, looking down at the woman I'd loved for half my adult life, the woman who'd just spent 3 hours in another man's bed and was now lying to my face with the casual ease of someone who'd had plenty of practice. "I'm sorry it's been so stressful," I said. Maybe things will calm down next week." But I knew they wouldn't, because the next morning I did something I'd never done in 20 years of marriage. I called in sick to work and followed my wife. She left the house at 8:30 a.m., dressed in a conservative business suit that made her look like the successful advertising executive she actually was. She drove to her office building downtown, parked in her assigned spot, and walked into the lobby like any other working professional starting their day. I parked across the street and waited. At 10:15 a.m., she emerged with Sean. They walked 2 blocks to a coffee shop, where they sat at a corner table, leaning close together, sharing what looked like an intimate conversation. Sean reached across the table and touched her hand. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen in months. At 11:30 a.m., they walked back toward the office building, but took a detour into the parking garage. I moved my car to get a better angle and watched as Sean pressed Marta against the side of his Porsche and kissed her like they were teenagers sneaking around behind the school. I took photos of everything. At 12:45 p.m., they left together in Sean's car, presumably for lunch. I followed them to an upscale Italian restaurant, where they were seated at a table by the window. I parked where I could see them through the glass and watched my wife laugh at another man's jokes, touch his arm, lean forward in the way that meant she was hanging on his every word. They were back at the office by 2:30 p.m. Marta's car stayed in the parking garage until 6:15 p.m., which was her normal quitting time. But Sean's Porsche was gone by 4 p.m. When Marta came home that evening, she looked tired and stressed. "How was your day?" she asked, kicking off her heels and collapsing onto the couch. "Quiet," I said. "I wasn't feeling well, so I stayed home. How was the Morrison account?" "Still a nightmare. Sean and I spent most of the day trying to salvage the campaign. I think we're making progress, but it's going to require some long hours over the next few weeks." I nodded sympathetically, the way I'd been doing for months, while inside I marveled at how easily the lies rolled off her tongue. "Maybe I can help," I offered. "I know you've been stressed about work lately." She looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Nick, honey, you're sweet, but this isn't really your area. Sean and I have a good working relationship. We understand each other's creative process." "I'm sure you do." That night, after Marta fell asleep, I sat in my home office and organized my evidence. Photos, screenshots, credit card statements, GPS data, and detailed notes about times, locations, and conversations. I had enough proof to end my marriage and destroy Sean's career. But ending things wasn't enough anymore. Not after listening to my wife describe me as a pathetic puppy. Not after watching her lie to my face with practiced ease. Not after realizing that she and Jamie had been laughing at my expense for months. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to be humiliated. I wanted them to know what it was like to have their lives turned upside down by someone they'd underestimated. I wanted revenge. And I was going to get it. The plan started with a simple phone call to Sean's wife. Lynette Grady was a successful real estate attorney with her own practice and a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations. According to her LinkedIn profile, which I'd studied extensively, she specialized in high-stakes commercial real estate deals and had never lost a case that went to trial. She was also, according to the society pages of the Chicago Tribune, married to Sean for 12 years and the mother of twin 10-year-old boys. I called her office on a Thursday morning, using a voice-changing app on my phone and claiming to be a concerned friend who thought she should know about her husband's extracurricular activities with a married coworker. "I don't know who this is," Lynette said, her voice sharp and professional. "But if you have something to say about my husband, you can say it to my face." "Harbor Point Apartments, Unit 847, I said. "Tuesday and Thursday evenings, usually between 7 and 11 p.m. Her name is Marta Carter. She drives a white BMW, license plate MRC 2019. She's married too. There was a long silence. If this is some kind of joke, check his credit card statements from the past 4 months. Look for charges at Romano's Italian restaurant, the Ritz-Carlton downtown, and Victoria's Secret. Then decide if it's a joke. I hung up before she could respond. Phase 2 involved Jamie, who had made the mistake of underestimating exactly how much I knew about her own secrets. Because while I'd been investigating Marta's affair, I'd also been paying attention to Jamie's digital footprint. And Jamie, it turned out, had her own complicated relationship with the truth. She was married to David, a soft-spoken accountant who worked long hours and traveled frequently for business. But Jamie's Instagram posts and credit card statements told the story of a woman who was spending a lot of time and money with someone who definitely wasn't her husband. His name was Marcus, and he was a personal trainer at the upscale gym where Jamie claimed to be taking yoga classes. Based on the evidence I'd gathered, Jamie's yoga sessions involved significantly more physical activity than traditional stretching and meditation. I created an anonymous email account and sent David a carefully curated collection of photos showing his wife entering and leaving Marcus's apartment, along with screenshots of some particularly incriminating text messages I'd recovered from Jamie's social media accounts. The email was simple. Thought you should know what your wife does during her yoga classes. Phase 3 was the most delicate part of the operation. It required perfect timing and a level of technical skill that most people didn't realize I possessed. I'd been maintaining the IT systems for Marta's advertising agency for the past 5 years, handling their network security and troubleshooting their computer problems on a contract basis, which meant I had administrative access to their email servers and security systems. On Friday afternoon, I used that access to set up a very special surprise for Monday morning. I created a hidden folder on the agency's shared server and uploaded every piece of evidence I'd collected, photos of Marta and Sean together, screenshots of their emails and text messages, credit card statements showing their hotel visits and expensive dinners, and a detailed timeline of their affair. Then, I scheduled an email to be sent to every employee in the agency on Monday morning at 9 a.m., with the subject line, regarding the Sean Grady, Marta Carter situation. The email was brief and professional. Please see the attached documentation regarding inappropriate workplace conduct between Creative Director Sean Grady and Account Executive Marta Carter. This information is being provided in the interest of workplace transparency and professional integrity. But the real masterpiece was Phase 4. I'd discovered that the agency was hosting their annual client appreciation party on Monday evening at the Riverside Country Club. It was a big event, with all their major clients, employees, and their spouses invited to celebrate another successful year. Marta had been planning to attend with me, though she'd made it clear that she considered my presence more of an obligation than a pleasure. Just try not to be too boring, she'd said when the invitation arrived. These people are important to my career. I'd smiled and promised to be on my best behavior. And I would be. I'd be perfectly behaved while I destroyed her life. I spent the weekend making final preparations, double-checking my evidence, and practicing my presentation. Because Monday night wasn't just going to be a client appreciation party, it was going to be a reckoning. On Sunday evening, Marta came home from another work session with Sean, looking satisfied and slightly disheveled. "How was your day?" I asked, the same question I'd been asking for 20 years. "Productive," she said, not bothering to look at me as she headed upstairs for her post-affair shower. "We're really making progress on the Morrison account." "I'm sure you are," I replied. She paused at the bottom of the stairs and turned back to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Nick, are you feeling okay? You've been acting strange lately." "Strange how?" "I don't know. Different. Like you're planning something." I smiled at my wife, the woman who'd spent 4 months betraying me while describing me as pathetic and clueless. "Just looking forward to tomorrow night," I said. "It should be quite a party." Monday morning arrived like Christmas, and Judgment Day rolled into one. I got up early, made coffee, and watched Marta get ready for work with the careful attention of someone studying a rare species in its natural habitat. She chose a navy blue dress that was professional but flattering, paired with the pearl necklace I'd given her for our 15th anniversary. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled to look effortlessly elegant. She looked like a woman who had her life completely under control. "Big day today?" I asked, handing her a cup of coffee. "The Morrison presentation is this afternoon," she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Sean and I have been working on it for weeks. If we land this account, it could mean a promotion for me." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm sure you and Sean make a great team." Something flickered across her face, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "We do," she said. "We understand each other." At exactly 9 a.m., while I sat in my home office pretending to work, my anonymous email was delivered to every employee at Brennan & Associates Advertising. 47 people received a detailed account of Marta and Sean's affair, complete with photographic evidence and documented proof of their deception. My phone started ringing at 9:12 a.m. "Nick?" Marta's voice was shaky, barely controlled. "We need to talk." "I'm at home," I said calmly. "Where I've been every evening for the past 4 months while you were working late with Sean." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "How long have you known?" she finally asked. "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to realize that you and Jamie have been treating me like entertainment. Long enough to understand that you never intended to stop." "Nick, please, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think, Marta. And now everyone at your office knows it too." I hung up and turned off my phone. At 10:30 a.m., Raj knocked on my door. "Sarah sent me over to check on you," he said, looking concerned. "She said you looked like a man with a plan, and Sarah's plans usually end with someone calling the police." "No police needed," I assured him. "Just a little public education." "What did you do, Nick?" I showed him the evidence I'd compiled and explained my morning email blast to the advertising agency. Raj whistled low. "Damn, brother. You don't mess around when you finally decide to fight back." "I'm not done yet." "What else are you planning?" "Tonight's the agency's client appreciation party. Marta's been looking forward to it for weeks. She thought it might lead to a promotion." "And now?" "Now it's going to lead to something very different." Raj studied my face with the expression of someone trying to decide whether his friend had finally snapped. "Nick, I've known you for 8 years. You're the most level-headed, rational guy I've ever met. Are you sure you want to do this?" "Raj, for 20 years I've been level-headed and rational. I've been understanding and supportive and patient. And where did it get me? My wife thinks I'm pathetic. Her best friend thinks I'm a joke. The man she's sleeping with thinks I'm too stupid to figure out what's happening in my own marriage. So you're going to burn it all down?" "I'm going to show them what trouble really looks like." At 2 p.m. my phone rang. It was Emma. "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom called me crying, saying you'd done something terrible and she didn't know how to fix it." "Your mother has been having an affair for 4 months," I said simply. "I found out about it and made sure her co-workers knew about it too." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Are you sure? I mean, Mom can be difficult, but an affair?" "I'm sure, sweetheart. I have photos, emails, text messages, credit card statements, and GPS data. I also have evidence that Jamie has been helping her cover it up while having her own affair with a personal trainer named Marcus." "Oh my God. Dad, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish what I started." "What does that mean?" "It means your mother is about to learn what it feels like to be humiliated in front of people whose opinions matter to her." At 6 p.m., I put on my best suit, the charcoal gray one Marta had bought me for our anniversary 2 years ago, and drove to the Riverside Country Club. The party was already in full swing when I arrived. The agency had rented the main ballroom, and it was filled with clients, employees, and their spouses, all dressed in their finest clothes and making the kind of small talk that lubricates business relationships. I spotted Marta immediately. She was standing near the bar with a group of clients, wearing a forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked pale and shaken, like someone who'd spent the day trying to explain the unexplainable. Sean was on the other side of the room, surrounded by a different group of people, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing toward the exits. Jamie was notably absent. I walked up to the bar and ordered a scotch, positioning myself where Marta couldn't help but see me. When our eyes met across the room, I raised my glass in a small toast and smiled. She excused herself from her group and walked over to me, her heels clicking against the marble floor with sharp, angry precision. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "I'm attending my wife's company party," I said pleasantly, just like we planned. "Nick, please, we need to talk about this privately. Not here." "Why not here? These are your colleagues, your clients, the people whose opinions matter to you. Shouldn't they know what kind of person they're doing business with?" "You're being cruel." "I'm being honest. There's a difference, though I understand why you might not recognize it." Before she could respond, the agency's president, William Brennan, stepped up to the microphone at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for a few moments, I'd like to say a few words about the past year and our plans for the future." The room quieted, and everyone turned toward the front. Brennan was in his 60s, a distinguished man with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect. "This has been a challenging year for our industry," he began, "but it's also been a year that has tested our character and our commitment to the values that built this agency." I saw Marta's face go white. "Unfortunately, we've recently learned that not everyone in our organization has lived up to those values. This morning, evidence came to light of serious misconduct involving 2 of our employees. Conduct that violates not only our professional standards but also the trust of our clients and colleagues." The room was completely silent now. I could see people glancing around, trying to figure out who Brennan was talking about. Effective immediately, Sean Grady and Marta Carter are no longer employed by this agency. Their behavior has been unacceptable, and we will not tolerate it. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the whispers started, spreading through the room like wildfire as people put together the pieces of the morning's email blast and Brennan's announcement. Marta stood frozen beside me, her face a mask of humiliation and rage. "You did this," she whispered. "You destroyed my career." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed your career when you decided to sleep with your coworker and lie to your husband about it. I just made sure people knew the truth." Across the room, Sean was pushing through the crowd toward the exit, his face red with embarrassment and anger. Several people tried to stop him, but he brushed past them without a word. 20 years, Marta said, her voice breaking. 20 years of marriage, and you humiliate me like this? 4 months, I replied. 4 months of you humiliating me while I trusted you completely. The only difference is that your humiliation is public. She turned and walked away, her head held high, despite the stares and whispers that followed her across the room. I watched her go, feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction, but wasn't regret either. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad, I just talked to Jamie's husband, David. He confronted her about the personal trainer. She confessed to everything. He's filing for divorce." I finished my scotch and left the country club, driving home through the quiet suburban streets where I'd lived as a faithful husband for 20 years. When I got home, Marta's car was in the driveway, but the house was dark. I found her in our bedroom, packing a suitcase with methodical precision. "Where will you go?" I asked. "My mother's," she said without looking at me, "until I figure out what comes next." "And Sean?" "Sean made it very clear today that he's not interested in dealing with the complications of this situation. Apparently, I was just a distraction." She closed the suitcase and turned to face me. "I hope you're satisfied, Nick. You got your revenge. No, I said. I got the truth. There's a difference. She walked past me toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened. Nothing just happens, Marta. People make choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie to me. You chose to let your friend help you make me look like a fool. Those were all deliberate decisions. And you chose to destroy my life instead of trying to save our marriage. Our marriage was already destroyed. I just made sure everyone else could see it too. She left without another word, and I stood alone in the bedroom we'd shared for 20 years, surrounded by the remnants of a life that had been built on lies I'd been too trusting to see. But for the first time in months, I wasn't invisible. For the first time in months, I wasn't in trouble. I was free.